Hello, dear viewers, and welcome to the Radio Television of Djibouti's English News Edition. Here are our headlines for this evening. Closing meeting of the experts report on the establishment of a housing finance mechanism. In international news, presidential election under the threat of attacks in Afghanistan. Thank you for joining us in our newsroom. The President of the Republic, His Excellency Mr. Ismail Mergele, participated in the General Debate session of the 74th session of the General Assembly of the United Nations, convened by the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres. Several topics were on the agenda of this meeting, which usually brings together the largest number of heads of states and governments from all over the world. The eradication of poverty, access to quality education, peace and security, and the issue of climate change among the main topics to be discussed during this meeting. The Republic of Djibouti is in line with all the themes on the agenda of this 74th United Nations General Assembly. Indeed, quality education is under the aegis of President Gele, an objective largely endorsed in Djibouti after the previous success of education for all. Peace and security are also an integral part of our country's identity repertoire, all the more so in the last 20 years when it has acquired in the East African region the status of spearhead of the global program to combat terrorism and extremism on all sides. Djibouti's determination to tackle the problems related to the latter two areas, namely the fight against poverty and global warming, is respectively perceivable through the fact that job creation is being respectively redefined. Following the President's speech in New York, an analysis of the highlights in his speech has been developed. The President of the Republic, His Excellency Ismail Mergele, in an important address at the 74th General Assembly of the United Nations, noted the total commitment of our country to multilateral efforts dedicated to managing the main challenges of our world: peace and security, global warming, health of all, the fight against inequalities, especially those related to gender, are all themes including in the Millennium Development Goals, to which the Republic of Djibouti fully subscribes, said the head of state, who reiterated Djibouti's commitment to the values of multilateralism. Multilateral action is vital, it's urgent. It is only collectively that solution to the global challenges of the poverty, inequality, and climate change can be found, the President of the Republic said in substance. In this intervention, President Gele did not limit himself to general statements to illustrate how much our country is working on a daily basis to give shape to the Millennium Development Goals. It has indeed carried out an inventory of many reforms undertaken in our country on these issues and recalled, as well as the fight against gender inequalities. Djibouti has adopted a law increasing the quota for Djibouti women from 10 to 25% in the National Assembly. As early as February 2014, Djibouti introduced compulsory health insurance for the active segment of its population, and as a social health assistance program passed for all member persons previously identified as having no income, said His Excellency Ismail Mergele, thus giving full expression to our country's efforts to achieve the MDGs of health for all. In addition to Djibouti's commitment to the values of multilateralism, President Gele's speech to the United Nations General Assembly included a more focused component on Djibouti's candidacy for the non-permanent seat of the Security Council. In this regard, the head of state of Djibouti stressed the legitimacy of our country to stand for the post of African Group on the Security Council for the period 2020 and 2024. With regard to the rules and procedures in force, and in particular the principle of rotation, the Republic of Djibouti is the natural candidate of the African Union for this seat, he observed, calling on nations around the world to provide their support and assistance to our country in the context of this election. The Republic of Djibouti is all the more determined to win this election because it has a strong vocation to contribute to the advancement of issues traditionally placed under the aegis of the Security Council and in particular relating to peace and security, the triumph of consensus and negotiated solutions, President Ismail Margele pointed out. In the part of this speech, still dedicated to our country, the head of state also reiterated his faith in a final settlement of our dispute with neighboring Eritrea. With regard to these issues on the agenda in the countries of the region, he first referred to the case of Somalia. On the contrary, he urged the international community to redouble its efforts and commitment to help Somalia achieve its priorities, namely federal election, increased security, implementation of ambitious economic reforms, and debt relief. Sudan was the second country in the region he mentioned. About it, he welcomed the successful outcome of the political crisis that had affected the country in recent months. We welcome the success of the negotiations that led to a peaceful resolution of the crisis and the signing of a power-sharing agreement, he said. In southern Sudan, the talks between President Salva Kiir and Riek Machar are positive development, said the Djibouti president, who called for the establishment of a transitional government by 12 November for the country. The head of state also used his address to the United Nations to recall Djibouti's on the Yemeni issue. We reaffirm our solidarity with the legitimate authorities of Yemen and welcome the political will to continue their efforts to implement the agreement, he said, before reiterating Djibouti's readiness to continue to welcome Yemen's brothers and sisters. This sister country is facing an unprecedented humanitarian tragedy. From the outset, my country has generously welcomed the Yemeni refugees to its territory. He recalled strongly condemning the September 14 attack on oil installation in Saudi Arabia. Under the aegis of the Prime Minister, Mr. Abdul Qadir Kamil Mohammed, the Ministry of Housing, in collaboration with the World Bank Group, organized a closing expo meeting on the establishment of a housing financing mechanism at the People's Palace on Thursday, 26 September. This important meeting to present the mission of expertise was held at the People's Palace. It was attended by the Secretary General of the Government, the Minister of Economy and Finance and Industry, the Minister for Trade, the Ministry of Social Affairs and Solidarity, the Governor of the Central Bank, the resident representative of the World Bank, as well as actors in the housing sector. Themes discussed during this working session focused on the establishment of housing finance mechanisms by the banking sector. The Minister of Housing, Amin Abdi Aden, presented this project in its purpose. She said that this project aims to eliminate slums on its territory and provide good living conditions for all residents. In his speech, the Minister of Economy and Finances, Mr. Ilyas Moussadouale, stressed the crucial importance of this project for the country, but also for its urbanization. And for his part, the Prime Minister Abdul Qadir Kamil Mohammed said in his speech on this occasion that the work of this session comes within the framework of political will invested in improving the living conditions of the people of Djibouti and provide them with a suitable environment where they are. In the margins of the 74th General Assembly of the United Nations, in which he took part alongside the head of state, His Excellency Ismail Margele, the Minister of National Education and Vocational Training, His Excellency Mustafa Mohammed Mahmoud, took part in New York in a high-level panel and organized by Education Above All Foundation. The theme innovative face in financing to solve the insoluble problem of the ODD4. The minister is accompanied by a delegation composed of Director General of Education, Mr. Abdi Dirir, and the Director General of Administration, Mr. Salah Halwan. This participation of our Minister of National Education is recognition of the achievement and commitment of MENFA, a label of trust that of the technical and financial partners who support the MENFA, and above all, a recognition of the ambitious educational policy of the President of the Republic, for whom education has always been a paddle horse. In a speech on this occasion, the Minister of National Education and Vocational Training, Mustafa Mohammed Mahmoud, said that the government of Djibouti has spared no effort in supporting the ambitions and policy of providing comprehensive education for all children in the national territory. At the same time, he praised the achievements made in the visit of the National Education and Training in the face of all challenges in partnership with international donors as well as the and financial partners in order to obtain an education of quality. The minister focused on the continuous efforts made by the government to enhance the level of education system. A delegation led by the Member of Parliament for Ken Calvados region, Bertrand Bou, and President of the France Djibouti Friendship Group, including four parliamentarians, including Ms. Anne Chapelier, elected from the Gare Alsace region, Mr. Jean-Luc, elected from Alsace, and as well as Mrs. Veronica Michel, and finally Mr. Alexander Michel, an official of her state, visited the Durale Container Terminal, the DMP, in the new Djibouti International Free Zone located at PK23 successively in the morning of Tuesday. The ambassador of the French Republic to Djibouti, Arnaud Guillois, accompanied the delegation on this visit to the country's critical economic infrastructure. They first visited the Durale container terminal. On the spot, the SGTD's officials gave the French parliamentary delegation some explanation on the loading and unloading capacities of the SGTD grantees. Everything here is computerized. We know the location of each container on the ship before unloading its position at the port. Everything is well detailed, and that's what it makes it easier for us to load and unload the ship, the explanation said. The president of the port authorities then led the delegation and its Djiboutian to the DMP. Upon their arrival in the multipurpose of Durale, the French parliamentarians were welcomed by the interim director general of the ports. And at the DMP in Djibouti's new international free trade zone located at PK23, Somali were immersed in the capacities of these infrastructures, the visitors, which have made our country an essential regional hub for world trade. Then they went on a tour of the new international free zone where they could see the warehouses and other parts. And at the end of this visit, the French delegation returned to the headquarters of the authority of ports and free zones, where it was warmly welcomed by the president of this institution, Bakar Omar Hadi. On this occasion, the head of the Djibouti Port Authorities and Free Zones Marketing Department made a presentation on the future infrastructure projects. At the invitation of his Saudi counterpart, Lieutenant General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim, Chief of Staff of the General Staff of the Armed Forces, visited Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, to participate in the joint exercise entitled Red Wave 2 or Red Wave. In his trip, General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim was accompanied by a large delegation composed of Colonel Wais Omar Bukore, Commander of the Djibouti Coast Guard, Colonel Ahmed Dahir Jama, Commander of the National Navy, as well as Chief of Protocol and Chief of Staff of the Headquarters Regime, Colonel Mohammed Barakat, Director of ADF Human Resources, Lieutenant Colonel Mohammed Kayat Naji, Chief of Staff of the General Staff of the Armed Forces, and Commander Hassan Douali, Director of the ADF. We should also note the presence of Djibouti's military attaché in Riyadh, Lieutenant Colonel Ali Ismaili Gal. This large-scale operation, the second after the January 2018 operation, brought together the naval forces of 7 Red Sea countries: Djibouti, Somalia, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, Egypt, Jordan, and Yemen. The Republic of Djibouti has deployed 60 soldiers from Djibouti National Navy and Coast Guards of all ranks to participate in this exercise, structured in 2 sections of 30 people each. The heads of the general staff of participating countries were invited to this exercise. The Republic of Djibouti was represented by Lieutenant General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim, Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces, the Captain of the Western Fleet, in command of the exercise, General Thakar al-Harbi, first welcomed up all participants in the exercise Red Wave 2 to their second host, the Western Fleet Captain and Commander of the exercise, then thanked all the Chief of Staff for the honoring their presence and giving of their time despite their busy schedules. This testifies the importance they attach to the maritime safety of the Red Sea. Then the general gave a concise and detailed explanation of the exercise. The journalist said Saudi Arabia schedules and plans this kind of exercise twice a year. This requires extensive logistics preparation in advanced coordination and flawless execution. He stressed that the objective of this exercise is to secure maritime access for the countries of the Red Sea and has a twofold aspect: protecting international territorial waters in the fight against piracy and terrorism, strengthen military cooperation through joint exercises. And this exercise took place on a neighboring island called was the theme chosen was to dislodge criminals who had stormed this strategic island. To this end, military armad composed of several warships and the helicopters were used. The logistic involved consisted of Super Puma helicopters for military transport, Dolphin helicopters for the recognition and evacuation of the wounded, and Typhoon fighter aircraft for fire support and neutralizing the enemy. The maritime fleet composed of several warships and speedboats for the transport and landing of special forces. This fleet also had a significant fire capability that could neutralize and destroy the enemy. Started at 10 a.m., the exercise was quite complex. Typhoon fighter planes bombed enemy positions in turn, supporting Dolphin helicopters. Then the Super Puma helicopters were able to land the special forces that came into contact with the insurgents. The ground forces then followed to support and reinforce the action of the special forces in order to destroy any residue. For security reasons, the chief of staff were placed 4 kilometers from the action to follow the exercise through giant screens after 3 hours of intense activities. The exercise ended around 1 p.m. with the parachutes jumping with the flag of each participant and the parade of logistical air and sea means engaged during this exercise. This exercise, Red Wave 2, a continuation of the previous exercise of January 2018, entitled Red Wave 1, was a total success. To close with joy and good humor, the Saudi Chief of Staff General Fayed al-Wali invited all guests to share strong and sweet moments of a meal. In order to preserve Djiboutian art, the great Djiboutian writer Abdallah Haji Isman recently published his third book entitled Soyal Kafanka iyo Hoblada Djibouti in Somali, which stands for the history of arts and the Djiboutian artists. This 250-page book contains the history of Djibouti art and the artistic careers for 31 artists and authors, including 4 women who have all passed away. In an interview on national television, Mr. Abdallah Haji Isman, writer and former employee of the RTD, explained to us the reasons why these books were written and the social groups that will benefit from them. In this regard, he pointed out that the writing of this book had taken many years and that this initiative was taken after the deaths of many artists and authors. The writer pointed out that no one had written as much as he knew about the history of these artists and authors and their artistic careers that lasted for decades. Finally, he said that this new book will be an indispensable reference for researchers and young people wishing to learn more about the history of Djibouti art and former artists such as Ibrahim Garbayere, Hassan Ilmi, and Ibrahim Galle and Said Hamargod. The Republic of Djibouti is chosen for a shooting of a feature film that a Danish team intends to make. This is how our country will be the subject of a featured movie in Somali. This Danish team held a press conference at the Djibouti National Tourist Office to explain our country's choice to shoot this film. Djibouti attracts the full attention of the young director Kader Ahmed and the producer, who explained that our country had all the assets for the success of this feature film in Somali.
Very nice and kind and how to say it, reunion and love story here. And basically why we decided to come to Djibouti is the unique landscape you have here, and actually the whole story is written to happen in Djibouti. And I'm really happy how citizen of Djibouti has taken us and how friendly you are here, and you have helped us to prep this production. And we are about to start next week the production. And what actually I'm asking a working piece for us that we can make the nice story in your country.
On 26 September, the prefect of the Ali Sabeh region, Mr. Musa Al-Migani, received Barbara Menzi, resident coordinator of the United Nations system, and her cabinet members, accompanied by a security officer at the Ali Sabeh prefecture office. The delegation, led by the coordinator, then went to the Ali Adi camp and made a guided visit to the different structures of the camp. This visit is part of the preparation for the visit of the humanitarian assistant of the United Nations system. In the Khil region, the election of the President of the Union of Trucks and Buses and Minibuses, South Mail, took place. Two candidates were in the running, Mr. Abdul Sabudo Kamil, outgoing President, and Mr. Musa Hussein Mohammed. The election took place under the responsibility of the judicial officer, Mr. Mohammed Ambassa, with the presence of the deputy prefect, Mr. Yusuf Ali, and the two OPGs of the police and the gendarmerie. After the office closed at 6 p.m., the counting began and gave the following results. Abdul Sabudo Kamil obtained 109 votes out of 112 voters. Musa Hussein Mohammed obtained 3 votes out of 112 votes. Thus, Mr. Abdul Sabudo Kamil was elected once again with a large majority as President of the Union for a period of 2 years. Before the inauguration of the hair salon, Ambassador Enke and her staff had a meeting with the president of the Obok Regional Council, Mr. Mohammed Hamid Ismail. Upon his arrival in his office, the president welcomed the ambassador of the German Federation, Ms. Anke, and discussed how to improve the well-being and development of the population. On this occasion, the president of the council did not fail to express his concerns to the ambassador regarding the development of the Obok region, including the district of Fantahiru. In this context, the president wished the goodwill of the solar panel ambassador to cover the lighting needs in the area. Subsequently, the ambassador of the German Federation, Ms. Anke, and the president of the regional council inaugurated the high-end hairdressing salon in the presence of Obok Youth Association for Development. The project was engaged by the German cooperation in order to fight unemployment and create empowerment among women with disability. Moving on to the international news, presidential in Afghanistan under threats of attacks. Afghans are going to the polls this Saturday to elect their president in an election under high tension. The Taliban, hostile to the vote, claimed responsibility for several attacks during the election campaign. 18 candidates are in the running, but the vote could turn into a duel between outgoing President Ashraf Ghani and Executive Number 2 Abdullah. In addition to the transparency of the vote, the main concern of this presidential election is security. No reliable survey can be used to make predictions. Several observers predicted a low participation, both of insecurity and because of the population's mistrust of the political class. And that's all for this news. Thank you for joining us on the radio television of Djibouti. Have a good night.